Hi, Mom.
Did it work?
The evil is contained.
The Annabelle films are a running argument about how evil behaves. Across Annabelle, Annabelle Creation, and Annabelle Comes Home, the franchise keeps returning to a simple premise. The porcelain face is not the monster, it is a beacon. The force doing the real work is Malthus, a fallen angel that prefers contracts to claws, consent to conquest, and domestic spaces as its favorite stage. When the series remembers that rule, it hums. When it forgets, the movies wobble into noisy spectacle. Hey guys, what's happening? Niyat here with Film Comics Explained, and today we're exploring the demon behind the trilogy, breaking down and reviewing all three Annabelle films, and exploring the true story they are loosely based on.
So, the doll was never possessed?
No, it was used as a conduit.
It's something demonic.
We think it best the doll come with us.
That sounds like a great idea. She's all yours.
Ithalic is the conjuring verse's architect of blasphemy. Mouthus is its patient debt collector, an ancient angel turned demon that rarely acts directly when it can coax, corner, and bargain. In popular memory, it is Anabelle, because the porcelain doll is the vessel most people meet first. But the doll is only a lure and a point. Malthus can operate independently of any object and simply prefers anchors that put it in your home. What makes the entity so dangerous isn't raw power, though it has plenty, but its rule set. It leverages grief and fear to extract consent, weaponizes the familiar, and turns containment, not combat, into the only realistic win condition. It can't be reasoned or bargained with, and it absolutely will not stop until you're possessed.
What do you need?
Your soul.
Within the franchise's internal theology, Malthus belongs to the cohort of angels who followed Lucifer's rebellion and were cast out, becoming demons whose purpose is to deform creation and unmake trust. Even its name appears to riff on Malthus from the Lesser Key of Solomon, a shape-shifting great president of hell who deceives petitioners and accepts sacrifices only to betray them, transposed by the films into new iconography so that the raven becomes a ram-goat hybrid, and the builder of towers becomes a breaker of homes, while the core remains a deal-making intelligence that rewards invitation with ruin. Scripture puts the angelic rebellion before the temptation in Eden, since the serpent is already at work in Genesis 3, but gives no date. Many conservative chronologies date creation to 4004 BCE, so you'll see the fall of Satan, and by extension any fallen angels like Malthus placed pre-Edenic before 4004 BCE, or more cautiously, prehistory before Genesis 3. Some theologians also see a second historical expulsion tied to Christ's ministry and ascension, circa AD 30 to 33, as the moment Satan's heavenly access is curtailed. Importantly, the name Malthus doesn't come from the Bible at all. It appears in early modern demon catalogues. The earliest widely cited mention is in 1563, Johannæus Pseudo-Monarchia Demonum, and the form popularized in English comes from the 17th century Lesser Key of Solomon, circa 1650 to 1700, when the Lesser Key coalesced. In its true form, Malthus presents as a black ram-like humanoid with split or curling horns, predatory eyes, taloned hands and feet, a goatee jaw, and in earlier sightings, a lank mane between the front horns. The silhouette carries deliberate Baphomet resonance, goat, flame, throne, because the thing understands theater, and by the time of Annabelle Comes Home, the horns are larger, the facial hair is gone, the eyes glow, and the body reads leaner and faster, an in-canon redesign read as a post-feast metabolic shift following Evelyn's sacrificial soul in the first movie. Crucially, the horned body is only one costume, because Malthus is a shapeshifter that appears as what you will most likely trust or fear. B. Mullins as a child, Janice after possession, Sister Charlotte's habit, or even a smoke-black mass that slips through seams, vents, and ceilings, flickering between visible and invisible at will and heralding itself with a sub-bass rumble that turns rooms into instruments so that the house hums before your eyes adjust. The doll's movement is usually misdirection, because Malthus is moving the environment around the doll to make you watch it instead of the shadow stepping closer. The films outline a consistent metaphysic in which the doll is a beacon, so that when its case is opened, Malthus's reach amplifies and other nearby cursed artifacts stir, the doll functioning as a tuned antenna stabilizing the demon's influence into the physical world. Consent is the currency, since the entity can injure, maim, even kill, but to claim a soul it prefers a willing exchange, engineering dilemmas that push the living to offer themselves or another to stop the pain. Containment over conquest rules the universe, where evil isn't defeated so much as bounded by holy ground. Sacramentals and specific wards like the Warren's consecrated glass case and repeated blessings that narrow the demon's channels. Lastly, mimicry precedes manifestation, so Malthus always tries faces and sounds first. A loved one's voice just outside the frame, a priestly guardian echo, a nun in a dark hall, and only when leverage fails does it step out of the dark. From this rule set flow powers, tactics, and limitations. Possession is the cleanest path to control, and Malthus grooms through fear and isolation. Shapeshifting and illusion allow it to exploit grief, test faith, cause people to betray friends, and enable a faceless shadow to saturate space with anticipation, rewriting what you think you're seeing before breaking what you love. Telekinesis and environmental control make doors drift, reverse a chairlift, peel pages of scripture off a closet meant to bind it, eject books, and even demonstrate that a sanctuary like a church is contested rather than guaranteed. Locomotion and teleportation communicate that houses are the demon's body, not just its stage, and that being in two places at once is pervasive occupancy of a warding-free structure rather than true bilocation. Fear inducement is curated into ritualized dread. Immortality and persistence are givens for a fallen power that does not age and at most is displaced by blessings, by case, by rule, until a new vector opens. Yet limitations remain. Because it can be slowed and contained, it struggles to take what is not in some way offered directly or by carelessness, and it can be outmaneuvered by refusing engagement. This is why its strategy is always to make refusal feel impossible. Throughout the series, the psychology is consistent, because Malthus is not a frothing brute, but patient, sadistic, and theatrical, staging vignettes where you blame yourself for outcomes it authored, caring less about pain for its own sake than about willingness, because willingness is victory. Common misconceptions are easy to resolve once its MO is understood. The doll is not itself possessed, but a conduit, while the porcelain is antenna and bait. Churches are safer rather than guaranteed safe, and thresholds can be contested when invitation and momentum are strong enough. Smashing the doll does nothing, while locking the case does. Symbolically, the goat and ram aren't just edgy satanic shorthand, but economies, appetite, rut, refusal to yield, laid over stories of motherhood, adoption, and orphanhood so that Malthus reads like a parasite feeding on roles, with mothers who can't protect, fathers who can't atone, and children who won't be believed. Against this, practical containment is the only answer that works in universe. Close the circuit by keeping the case locked, the blessings regular, and the artifact room sealed. Starve the contract by refusing engagement, and invoke protective echoes so that faith, embodied as priests, prayers, and sanctified objects, narrow the demon's options and buy time for containment to resume. Malthus endures not because it is the most cosmically powerful entity in the canon, but because it requires only grief, an object, and a mistake, which is why it remains the Warren's most dangerous item. It is the conjuring verse distilled, fallen glory bending the domestic sacred into a contract.
You okay?
It's the doll, Ed. It's a beacon for other spirits.
The legend opens the night John Gordon, a young hospital resident, and his pregnant wife Mia realize the violence next door is spilling into their home.
A man and his wife were brutally stabbed to death by their estranged daughter, Annabelle Higgins, and her unidentified boyfriend.
Their neighbor's estranged daughter, Annabelle Higgins, now a disciple of the Ram, bursts in with her boyfriend. As John grapples with the man, Annabelle stabs Mia, scrawls a ram horn sigil, seizes Mia's newly gifted porcelain doll and cuts her throat, so a bead of blood runs into the doll's eye as her boyfriend is shot by the cops. That blood right makes the doll a conduit, and Malthus begins working through it at once. Mia, gentle, anxious, and on doctor-ordered bed rest, finds the ordinary turning predatory. A pan of Jiffy Pop starts a fire, the television crackles, the sewing needle jabs her finger, and an unseen force drags her across the floor and slams her onto her stomach. After their daughter Leah is born, the couple flees to a new apartment, only to unpack the same doll, a gift from John, that was thrown out after the disturbing events. Malthus' strategy is to break a mother's defenses and make a bargain feel inevitable, and it plays the long game directly through Mia. Someone leaves a chain of children's crayon drawings outside their door, a flip book of Leah's pram rolling into traffic. A small girl then appears in the apartment, sprinting mid-frame into the blood-soaked adult Annabelle Higgins. When Mia heads to the storage basement, her elevator begins malfunctioning, returning her to darkness over and over, while a horn silhouette advances and the lights begin to die. She's forced up the stairs as it gives chase just out of frame. The weird events continue as doors slam and lock seize, and the nursery becomes a ritual stage, with her soul scribbled across the walls in red crayon, while heavy books hurl themselves towards Leah. Their target could not be clearer. John reaches for help through their priest, Father Perez, the kind of steady believer who tries to solve problems by putting evil on holy ground. Carrying the doll toward the church, he learns how far Malthus' reach already extends as the demon blasts him off his steps and reclaims the vessel, while the spectre of Annabelle Higgins stands as proxy. With Perez hospitalized, Malthus moves to collect. It traps Mia outside Leah's door and shoves Evelyn, the warm, watchful owner of the nearby second-hand shop who has befriended Mia, into the hole. Evelyn's kindness hides a wound of her own. Years earlier, she caused a car accident that killed her daughter Ruby, and tried to take her own life afterwards. Inside the nursery, the doll seems to stand. Then Malthus reveals its cruelest illusion, turning the porcelain in Mia's arm into Leah's lifeless body. As Mia breaks, the corpse flickers into one of her old toys, and the contract is written plainly, "Your soul," etched on the window as it opens. John and Evelyn force the door to find Mia on the sill, cradling the doll and ready to jump to save her child. John drags his wife back from the edge, but the bargain still needs answering. Evelyn, carrying the weight of Ruby's death, takes the doll and steps into the open air herself. Malthus accepts the offered soul, and the apartment falls silent.
And our sacrifices touch God's heart.
Months later, the Gordons have moved on, but the conduit doesn't vanish. It migrates, sold as a rare collector's item, and eventually locked up by Ed and Lorraine Warren behind consecrated glass. As law, the pattern is unmistakable. Malthus creates a conduit through blood and sigil, announces itself with illusions of Annabelle Higgins, shadow mass manifestations, and staged accidents, contests holy thresholds when it has momentum, and uses telekinesis and environmental control to herd the living toward one outcome. It cannot simply take, it needs consent, so it engineers a night where a maternal sacrifice looks like the only way out, proving again that the doll is a beacon, the home is a trap, and containment, not victory, is the best the survivors can hope for.
Don't talk about her. Why not?
She's in a case for a reason.
Annabelle should have been a layup. Build a tight scare machine around the Conjuring versus creepiest prop, but it's the weakest entry in the sub-series. John R. Lunetti's directions applies a decent backdrop, negative space framing that dares you to scan the corners, a warm, sun-faded 1970s palette, nicotine yellows, mid-century furniture, Catholic ephemera, and Joseph Bishara's groaning metallic score that lets domestic sounds carry tension.
In the original script, there was very little about a demon character. I was kind of the one that pushed for that, knowing the resonance of fright that a demon presence can make beyond just the doll. And I wanted it to be like this thing had been in hell and it was jet black, like charred, like he's really been in hell. And that was kind of the visual kind of inspiration for it.
Starting with a reference point actually of a gargoyle that Gary had taken a photo of. I think it might have been from Rome.
Our designer, John Wheaton, did some designs based on the gargoyle, which is in the opening shot of the film. We passed it off to Norman and he started sculpting. And I was like, I really want to work on this. The design was cool and the concept was cool.
A few set pieces genuinely land, but the weakness is the script. Gary Doberman sketches Mia as new mother under siege and John as a plot courier. Their inner lives never deepen enough to make the scares hurt. Alfred Woodard's Evelyn is the lone standout, warm, guilty, wry, and a climactic sacrifice resonates more because of her performance than the film's build-up. Tonally, the movie wants Rosemary's Baby, satanic panic unease, and a modern jump-scare roller coaster, but the gears grind. Ideas like the demon using Annabelle as a broadcast tower, consent as the demon's contract, containment not conquest as the Warren's theology show up as scaffolding rather than theme. By the final act, the scare rhythm becomes predictable, and moments that should feel inevitable play like screenwriting levers. I guess there's some value here as a franchise foundation. The rules and mechanic are concepts later entries refine into richer character-led horror. As a standalone though, Annabelle is disappointing. Well-composed frames, a few nasty jolts, some elegant sound work, but it's shallow where it needed depth, and noisy where it needed nerve.
For me, the most fun part is going to the makeup trailer and seeing them applying the makeup of Joe Bashara, who has to suffer through another one of my movies playing the demon for me.
First step is to suffocate him by putting this bag on his head. Yeah.
I'm here playing a demon, and I'm the composer as well.
Our composer is also our demon. And that was the case on both Insidious movies. Bathsheba and The Conjuring was Joe as well. And I figured, my gosh, I got to carry the tradition forward.
Annabelle Creation frames Malthus as a demon that exploits grief to gain invitation and a body. The human family at the story's center are the Mullinses, Samuel, a doll maker, his wife Esther, and their young daughter Annabelle B.
I'll get it.
After B's fatal roadside accident in 1946, Samuel and Esther beg for a sign from their child. Malthus answers and asks to inhabit Samuel's porcelain showpiece. What begins as comfort, soft knocks, notes the sensation of B's presence turns predatory when Malthus mimics B, gouges out Esther's left eye, and forces the couple to call in a priest and seal the doll behind a Bible-papered closet. The house freezes in that moment of loss, a shrine that is really a lock.
They saved my soul, but the evil was still attached to that doll.
12 years later, the lock is tested when Sister Charlotte, a level-headed nun, arrives with 6 orphans, welcomed in by the Mullins. The girls include Janice, the lead protagonist recovering from polio and reliant on braces and a chairlift, and her best friend Linda, small, brave, and fiercely loyal. The others, Carol, Nancy, Kate, and Tierney, form a nervous chorus of curiosity. Samuel, now stern and secretive, lays one rule. B's old room must stay shut. Of course, Janice breaks it. She enters the room at night, finds the key, and opens the closet, reactivating the conduit Malthus needs. The demon starts with distance. Bells ring for no one, footsteps halt outside doors, a shadow slides along walls, and a figure dressed as a nun appears. This is not Valak, it is Malthus, mimicking Sister Charlotte to lure trust. When Janice takes the chairlift for safety, Malthus reverses the motor, yanks her into the air, and drops her, its first open attack. After a brief hospital stay, Janice returns to a house that is now a hunting ground. She sees a child's silhouette turn with a warped face as Malthus forces black bile down her throat in a perverse communion, claiming her as a host. Linda senses her best friend is hollowing out, and Malthus taunts the household by placing the doll at the dining table beside a fresh found you note, before murdering Samuel when he confronts it, snapping his fingers around a raised cross before breaking him. Esther, who's been hiding behind a porcelain half-mask, confesses the origin of the haunting and is soon found butchered, with Malthus turning grief into spectacle. With Janice under its control, Malthus expands the battlefield across the property. In a barn, a scarecrow creaks off its post as burlap splits to reveal clawed hands and a snarling half-face stalking Carol. Doors and the dumbwaiter become traps, herding the girls into corners. When Linda tries to end things by tossing the doll down the well, a clawed hand lashes up and drags her until Sister Charlotte hauls her back and slams the lid. Malthus then levitates Charlotte and smashes her into a mirror, prowls the holes through Janice with a knife, and keeps returning to Bee's room and the doll as ritual stages to force panic, guilt, and consent.
You swore that if I found a home, you'd come too. You know what they say about breaking a swear. You go straight to hell.
Sister Charlotte manages one temporary win by baiting Janice with the doll and ramming both the girl and vessel into the Bible-lined closet, but a jagged hole in the wall shows the rules have changed. Malthus now has a body. By the time the police arrive, Janice is gone, later resurfacing at an orphanage under the name Annabelle, and is adopted by Pete and Sharon Higgins, good, unsuspecting people who will become the victims that ignite the opening of Annabelle. Annabelle Creation is a genuine course correction by David F. Sandberg. The setup is classic tragedy, a doll maker and his wife shattered by their daughter's death, a farmhouse turned shrine, and the craft is meticulous. Patient camera work, precise blocking, textured practical lighting, lamps, candles, thin windows, and disciplined sound that lets chairlift stutter, wood settle, and reb strain. Sets are built to be explored, so geography anchors the scares. The script grounds the haunting in grief and consent, refusing to make the doll a tiny monster. The entity wears faces, rearranges space, and bargains its way in. Because the cosmology is clear, sequences play as cause and effect rather than gotchas. A Bible-papered closet that won't stay shut, a dumbwaiter that turns safety into a trap, a chairlift that reverses before a sudden drop, a scarecrow that quietly stops being an object, and a well sequence that weaponizes negative space.
I mean, I'd been a fan of the Conjuring franchise since I saw the first Conjuring, and thought it was one of the greatest horror movies, especially that year. And to be honest, at first I was like, where are you going to take that? Like, is there more to tell there? But then I read the script and realized that, yes, there was, because they had this whole origin story that was sort of its separate thing with new characters, a new story, something that I could make my own and something that could stand on its own as well, because like you don't necessarily need to have seen the first Annabelle, even to enjoy this one.
Characters give it heart. Janice post-polio is never a gimmick. Her limits become real stakes. Linda is flinty, loyal, and brave. The girls' group dynamics feel lived in. Sister Charlotte is steady without becoming an exposition machine. And the Mullinses register as parents warped by loss. His sternness, her porcelain half-mask of terror. Performances sell the morality. Fear without histrionics, courage without smugness, and the film threads continuity lightly, answering how Annabelle became Annabelle, while steering directly into the Conjuring ethos. Evil is never vanquished, and you pay dearly for inviting it in. Flaws are minor, a midsection that repeats the curious child, forbidden room, escalating price rhythm, and a few lines of generic haunt speak, but measured against its aims, it excels. Character attentive and genuinely frightening without noise or blur. It leaves a prequel that strengthens the original and a haunted house fable where the scariest thing isn't the doll moving, it's everything else that it does when she's in the room.
But it's just something about the past. If you go to an antique store and you look at those really old photos of people, there's something creepy about it, There's something inherently creepy about the past for some reason.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think she gets the name Annabelle because of Bee, right?
Yeah.
Because of the doll's maker's daughter who died in an accident. And Mr. and Mrs. Mullins try to communicate with her when she's already dead, so they connect with dark forces, and that's how evil comes to the house.
Yeah, they don't handle loss in a very healthy way, and that allows evil forces to latch on to that, to prey on their desperation, to sort of get into our world.
In 1971, Ed and Lorraine Warren seized the Annabelle doll from two traumatized nurses, Debbie and Camilla, seen purchased in a store by one of their mothers in the movie Annabelle. On the drive home, roadside spirits spill into the Warrens' path and nearly kill Ed. Back in Monroe, they lock the doll in a case of consecrated glass, seal it with prayers and Father Gordon's blessing, and place it inside their warded artifacts room.
Father, sooner the better.
Surely he scorneth the scorners, but he giveth grace unto the lowly.
By 1972, the Warrens are out on an overnight case, leaving their daughter Judy, a kid who already sees a spectral priest shadowing her, with Mary Ellen, a teen babysitter. Unfortunately, Mary Ellen's friend Daniela, restless with grief over her father's recent death, arrives with good intentions and bad timing.
I think they're concerned parents who wouldn't want negative influences around their child. Okay, but how would they know? She's psychic.
Drawn by the promise of the mourner's bracelet and aching for a sign, she finds the key in Ed's office, slips into the artifacts room, and after a knock she mistakes for her dad, unlatches Annabelle's case. From that point onward, Malthus turns the house into a crossroads and begins a campaign of attacks designed to splinter the girls and wring consent from their fear. The first waves feel like tests. There are knocks at the door with no one there, a fleeting glimpse of bee mullins and lights that refuse to behave. Then the recruitment starts. The ferryman stalks Mary Ellen, and she's dragged down a dark hallway that feels one step inside the underworld. The bride dress also senses Daniela's grief, moves over her shoulders, and possesses her into a frenzy. A suit of samurai armor even hums with leftover battlefield rage, pressing in on anyone who enters its orbit, while the feely-mealy parlor game sprouts demonic hands. Outside, Mary Ellen's shy would-be protector, Bob Palmieri, is hunted by a hellhound that materializes from fog and forces him to barricade himself inside the chicken coop. In Judy's room, Annabelle sits where she shouldn't as a color-cycling lamp shutters and the shadows move the wrong way. In the artifacts room, Daniela is trapped with a cymbal-clapping monkey toy and an old TV that predicts her immediate future, a bloodied version of herself answering a ringing telephone as the real phone begins to ring. Malthus's pattern is clear: drown the house in borrowed monsters, isolate each teen at her weakest point, and choreograph a choice that someone will soon regret. Judy is the one who names the fix. Everything woke up because Annabelle is loose. Lock her back in and the house will go quiet. Therefore, getting the doll to the case is the gauntlet. Guided by the priestly spirit that's been trailing Judy like a guardian, they finally track the doll, wrestle it across the house, and relatch the glass. The effect is immediate. The bride falls stiff, the ferryman recedes, the hellhound vanishes, the TV goes dead, the armor quiets, and feely-mealy becomes just a game again.
Bob?
Are you guys okay?
When Ed and Lorraine return, they do what containment demands: reconsecrate the room, reinforce the wards, restore the case's seals, and recommit to regular blessings so Malthus's reach stays throttled by ritual and glass. Lorraine also meets Daniela not with scolding, but with recognition. Her trespass was grief. Returning the photo, Daniela slipped into the bracelet, along with a message she's heard from the other side. The night ends pointedly with Judy's birthday cake.
Here we go. We'll have our own party.
Gary Doberman composes with clean axes and favors measured dolly moves over coverage, so geography stays legible and tension accrues from what the frame withholds. The camera often sits just off-center on doorways and stairmouths, letting space do the stalking while the action plays in layered foregrounds. Michael Burgess's cinematography leans into practical sources and subdued contrast, which gives the blacks tooth and makes the highlight feel like real bulbs, not stage light.
Okay, cut.
Gary being so good at creating scares in the proper atmosphere. At first, it can be just an apparition of the bloody bride. It's enough to scare the bejesus out of you. My appearances are often accompanied by the Annabelle doll being somewhere nearby.
I just thought haunting imagery of just blood against this white fabric of something that's supposed to be so pristine all the time. It's very ghostly imagery. It was fun creating that backstory too.
On the craft side, the film is a small showcase in restraint. Jennifer Spencer's production design doesn't just clutter shelves, it arranges materials, finishes, and silhouette language so each object reads at a glance without demanding exposition. The build quality of the primary set allows sustained shots. Hinges line up, sightlines connect, so you feel the house breathing room to room. Practical effects are prioritized and augmented with VFX scenes. The result is weight and texture. Kirk Murray's edit keeps the cadence closer to tightrope than trapdoor, with a pleasing alternation of suspicious stillness and carefully rationed reveals. As a piece of writing, we have clear stakes, an internal rule set that the film actively honors, and scare mechanics that read like variations on a theme rather than interchangeable jolts. With all of that said, it's kind of hard to believe the Warrens would leave their daughter alone with a teenage babysitter in a home holding some dangerous artifacts. This carelessness leads to frustration when viewing the film, as you can't help but feel the narrative would be avoided if an adult friend in their field looked after the museum while their daughter stayed with a family friend. While definitely better than Annabelle from a writing and craft perspective, this one still trails Annabelle creation.
Again, it's just James thinking so big, and he's so great at plussing everything.
You learn the hard way that there is a lot of evil in this room.
This movie really allowed us the opportunity to introduce other artifacts that we didn't initially come across in the earlier films, such as a haunted wedding gown. And then we get to see a haunted stuffed wolf creature, right? When you see that in the movie, you're like, where did the Warrens come across this?
Okay, here we go, pictures up.
A detective, a homicide detective that Lorraine and I were working with, wanted to see the museum. And he came down here, looked all over, and he said, you know, Ed, of all the things here, I can't take my eyes off that doll. At that time, it was still in a chair. The phone rang. I said, I'll be right back. Don't touch anything in this room. Well, I wasn't even up there talking for 10 minutes when I heard him coming up the stairs. He had to come through the passageway into the Halloween room and up into the kitchen. He was sweating. He couldn't speak. He was trembling. I thought he was having a heart attack. I told him to sit down and I'd call an ambulance. He said, no, Ed, it isn't that. I said, well, what's wrong? I don't want to talk about it. And Lorraine walked in, and he looked at Lorraine, and I guess he found it easier to talk to a woman than a man. He said, well, this man had picked that doll up. His aura had mingled with the aura of that doll, and something so terrible occurred that he resigned from the police department 3 months later and moved to California.
Is that right?
All three Annabelle movies hang on in one real case the Warrens publicized in the early 1970s about a Raggedy Ann doll, not a porcelain one, that two nursing students said began to move on its own, leave notes that read "help me" and scratch a visiting friend named Lou. After interviewing the roommates, often retold as Donna and Angie, Ed and Lorraine Warren concluded the doll wasn't possessed so much as manipulated by an inhuman spirit. They removed it, claimed their car misbehaved on the drive home, and eventually installed the doll in a wooden, priest-blessed display case in their occult museum with a sign, warning, positively do not open. That's the kernel the films fictionalize. In the Warrens' telling, a medium first said the doll was inhabited by the spirit of a child named Annabelle Higgins, a detail the movies keep, but the Warrens later argued this was a ruse to gain permission to stay. In their theology, spirits don't possess objects, demons do, and they latch to places or things to get to people. The most circulated aftermath stories, which the films echo as threshold dangers, involve a priest who supposedly dismissed the doll, then crashed his car, and a biker who allegedly mocked the case at the museum and died in a motorcycle wreck shortly after. Anecdotes that remain unverified but are part of the exhibit's lore. A few more real-world footnotes help separate folklore from film. The Occult Museum in Monroe, Connecticut, the room you glimpse fictionalized in Comes Home, has, for decades, been presented as the doll's resting place under family stewardship, today through the New England Society for Psychic Research, run by Judy Spira and Tony Spira. The museum's public access has fluctuated. Zoning, touring exhibits, and viral rumors that Annabelle escaped have surged online. Each time, handlers have posted proof that she remains secure. Skeptical sources also remind readers that the Warrens' narratives are contested and best understood as modern folklore that the movies dramatize. So if you strip the film down to their true story spine, you're left with this. In 1970 to 1971, a pair of roommates reported a troublesome Raggedy Ann. The Warrens reframed it as a case of demonic manipulation, took custody and displayed the doll in a consecrated case while building a ministry and a museum around the idea that evil can be quarantined. Everything else, the home invasion, the farmhouse prequel mythology, the artifact room gauntlet, is the franchise's fiction elaborating on those few, often retold claims.
A young man came in here one day with a bunch of college students, and after I told him about the doll and many other things, he came over here. I was standing over in the other corner. He started tapping on this glass and said, "I don't believe any of this is a bunch of hooey." He said, "If that doll can do anything, let it do something to me right now. Put a slash on me." I put him out of the building. He was on a motorcycle. 3 hours later, he was dead. The girl that he was with said that he was laughing about the doll when the motorcycle, just like the car, went out of control, hit a tree, and killed him instantly. The girl was in the hospital for over a year. You never challenge devils.